Welcome back to this series. In the first video, we set up a basic agent that took customer input, which we provided in an app, and just generated a response based on some basic documentation which we provided. In this video, we'll be setting up the email integration so our agent is a little more lifelike. We'll be monitoring an email inbox instead of providing the input ourselves, and we will be sending the response back to the client automatically if the agent was able to adequately respond to it. If it wasn't, we won't be sending a response out at all, and we'll be setting that basic conditional logic in this video as well. So here's the flow as we last left it. I've added some sticky notes with this tool you can see here at the bottom right, but it's just for visual clarity. Let's think of outputs first. We want to send an email out as opposed to just outputting the response from the agent. To do that, I'll start by adding a send email node. I'll be using Gmail in this tutorial. I'll just select that. And I'll move it over here. This node takes a few mandatory inputs, namely recipient, title, and body. The body is the easiest in this case. It will basically be the response that comes from the agent. So I'll just connect that. And I'll get rid of our text output. We don't really need it anymore. As far as the recipient and the title go, these will basically be inputs. The recipient will be the email of the client that sent us the communication to begin with. And for the title, we can once again set up a static input like response to your query, something like that. So let's add those now. I'll create a couple of inputs and I'll set them here. Now let's think about the condition we discussed earlier. We want the agent to let us know if the response it has come up with needs human review. And to do that, let's look at the configuration for generate text, which is the node responsible for coming up with the response we will provide. We can add something to the prompt so that it lets us know whether the response needs human review or not. Let's say something like, so now we basically expect the response to include this string needs human review if it does indeed need human review. I'll click away from this for now. And we need to make our flow care about that condition in the output of generate text. To do that, I'll add a condition node. Which I'll drag over here. I'll rearrange this a little bit. And I'll add the output of generate text to our condition node instead. I'll rename this same as we have before, so we don't lose track of what each variable means. Now let's look at the configuration for this condition node. There's a few things we can define here. First of all, we see what the actual condition is, which will be dependent on the inputs we have at our disposal. In our case, basically just the response coming from generate text, as well as what the outputs will be when the condition is met and when it is not. As far as the outputs go, we don't really want to change anything about the contents of the response coming from generate text. So I'll just add these to be the input we provide, but they're not changed. The part we really care about is the condition. I'll move this over here. So we'll be looking at our only input, response, and we'll be looking for the string needs human review. Whether we look for the string or its absence really boils down to preference. In this case, I will go for does not contain, which means that when the condition is true, our response does not need human review. It is ready to go out back to the client. And so I can map the output of when true to the body of the email we'll send out. If we take a minute to look at this, what will basically happen is that when the condition is true, so we do not need human review, then we'll send the email out to the client. And when it's false, so we do need human review, we will not do anything. You can see that the flow leads nowhere. In the next video, we'll be fleshing out this exact path. All right, we can move on. And for now, let's look at the missing integration warning we get in the send email node, which is exactly prompting us to establish the connection to a Gmail account so we can perform these actions. Noxus integrates natively with a lot of external applications from email to databases, messaging apps, social media, and so on. so that you can read and write data to and from any of these applications natively, seamlessly, without needing to worry about setting up custom stuff. You can see some of the existing integrations by navigating to the left pane and selecting integrations. There's a lot of stuff here. In the context of this tutorial, we'll only be using Gmail, but you can see that there's a lot of options and a lot of stuff that's already built in. Going back to our flow, let's go ahead and click to connect. And this will basically take us through the auth2 process, which you've already seen in a lot of pages. Once you go through that, you'll be taken back to the flow editor. On the output side of things, we're basically done. We're sending an email back to the client with the response if it is adequate, and not sending anything for now if it's not. Before we move on to think about how this flow is actually triggered, let's go ahead and save a version for it. Noxus saves your changes automatically, so you don't need to worry about losing anything over not saving. But in order for some components to use one another, we need to work off of static versions. We can save versions at the top right by selecting the dropdown and saving a new version. I'll just call it v1. Now, let's move on to inputs. As we said at the beginning of the video, we want this flow to go off automatically whenever we have a new email coming into the inbox we're monitoring here, the one that we set up the integration for. To do that, I'll navigate to the left pane again and select triggers, this little lightning bolt icon. Go ahead and create a trigger for Gmail. And we can see some configuration options for our trigger here. First of all, as I mentioned just before, we can select which version of the flow we'll be running. This ensures us that this specific static logic will be running whenever an email comes in. We can also monitor a specific source email if we only want the flow to go off with emails coming from a specific address. And leave that empty for now so it responds to everything. And label is the one we will care about for now. We want to monitor the inbox in specific. There's a few more options which we don't need to worry about. And finally, we can also map some inputs. In this case, it is rather straightforward. We want the body of the incoming email to be the query of the customer, which we're receiving in the flow and will process. And we want the sender of the email to be the person we respond back to, the recipient that we discussed just before. So let's map those. The message body of the incoming email will be the customer query, and the sender is the client address that we will be responding back to. I'll hit create trigger, and there we go. Now this flow will run by itself automatically whenever an email comes into the inbox that we define in the integration. I'll close this for now. That's basically the whole flow for now. Let's go ahead and try out the two obvious cases here. We can ask about something we know the agent has all the information it needs for, like the payment methods again. And we can ask about something it should have no clue about, like whether the company works through bank holidays. I'll go ahead and compose an email for each of those. Here's the inbox of the email I set up the integration for in this tutorial. You can see the email regarding payment methods, very simple, and the one to do with bank holidays as well. We can now go back to our flow editor page, namely to the past runs tab, where we expect a couple runs to have come in as a result of the incoming emails. You can see that the first one has actually come in. You can see it was triggered via Gmail input here. Let's click into that. This is the one to do with payment methods. We look at progress. You can see that the output of generate text was that we only take payments by credit card. Simple enough. Close that and I'll refresh. We can see that the second one has also happened. The one to do with bank holidays, as we expected. And if we look at progress, you can actually see that send email is grayed out because the step was skipped. If we look at generate text, you can see that it came up with a response based on the information it had, but ultimately finished it off with needs human review because it wasn't able to respond to the original customer query. You can also actually look at the inbox for the email I sent these from, where we can see just the one email regarding payment methods. That's going to be it for this video. Our agent is now able to monitor an inbox by itself, come up with a response as it already did, and send it out if it is adequate and not do anything else if it's not. On the next video, we'll be making sure that those unhappy scenarios end up in the person that they need to. Thanks for watching.